Oh, yes, it's Wednesday. So, what comics did Mr. Nailsin read? Well, I gave some titles, and this is mostly just DC. Yeah, what are you going to do? Marvel, I looked at Daredevil and Moon Knight. Might be some promise there. We'll get back to that at a later date. But DC, which has the floor wide open to them, certainly that looks to be the case in film and perhaps television in the future. But in the case of the comics, they decided to repeat what Marvel had done to its detriment. So didn't have a lot of high hope, but then World's Finest came along, and I thought, wow, look at that. That's amazing. It's really good. And so other titles were offered up as some you should check out. Batman was one. I looked at that. I can see kind of what they mean, but some of it seemed, I don't know. The jury's still out on that one. That's they under Chip Zdarsky, so I'll check it out. Sticking with it for the moment, and we'll get back to it. The Flash was another one. I actually got to say, of the two, I was enjoying the prequel comic Flash. And sometimes the art's pretty lacking, and some of it's a bit just kind of stupid. But it was a fun read, and it's basic superhero stuff. I think there's one more issue in that one. It may already be out. I don't know, but I'll check back on that too. But the main series, now helmed once again by Wally West, I gave it a shot, and I was not so impressed. Now, granted, the issues I read were all tied into Dark Crisis and that sort of thing. So a lot of it was just a bunch of slap job stuff that I really didn't care about. So I'm not seeing what others were saying about it. So decided I'll check when it's out of that. And so it was out of it, more or less. And so for 787, they had this story where it's just a basic story. So that's an improvement on it. You've got Wally West with his family. He's watching TV with the kids. And all of a sudden, they come across this wrestling match on TV, and they're all hyped and excited. And they say, wow, this really looks cool. They're actually doing it with superpowered wrestlers and everything. But it turns out it's actually happening in Central City. These are wrestlers from outer space. And this wrestling network goes all over the galaxy and whatnot, and has these matches. And they're tearing up the city. So the Flash heads over there to deal with this. Only to discover that, don't worry, they make sure that no civilians are harmed, and they have little robots who put everything back to the way it was when they leave. So it's a bit over the top, silly, and kind of stupid. I can see the gimmick and the joke to it, and it's okay. I wasn't really wowed by it. And you had the typical pro wrestling characteristics to it, and I don't know if it's something they'll return to, but the one little interesting little tidbit was a Maul from Wildcats shows up as one of the wrestlers, and I know they're redoing Wildcats and the Wildstorm characters, and I think they're going to go ahead and keep them back established in their own universe, which I think is better. A while back, they did this, with surprisingly written by Warren Ellis, this Wildstorm series, and I read that thing, and oh my God, that was boring. So boring and bereft of just everything, even the art, which was just barely adequate. I mean, anatomy was good and everything, but it was just like art for, the pamphlets you read at the doctor's office, instructional things, and that was about it. Oh, geez. But that's nothing. The story itself was so boring and had nothing really to it, which I was surprised because Warren Ellis is a pretty solid writer, but it wasn't, nowhere near as cool as his early days with, Stormwatch and Authority and all that. So now they're going to revisit Wildcats. I'm forgetting who's involved with that, and hopefully it gets a good shot. We'll have to wait and see. But putting them in our own universe, I think, is better. So anyway, that was the wrestling issue, and it was silly. And Wally West is the silly Flash. So that's what you get. I don't know what they're doing. They've got too many Flashes. I don't know how they're gonna. They'll just every other issue is the other one. I don't know. But then finally, issue 788, I actually did like. It brought in the Rogues, and there was quite a good run of those in the Wally West era of those guys, and it looks like they're just returned to form. But we've got this corrupt mayor who's newly elected of the city, and apparently the mayor of Central City has far more powers than your average mayor does, where he can grant pardons to prisoners and deputize them. So that's what he's done. The Rogues are now the cops, or they're super cops for him, to clean up the city. And the Flash, of course, has problems with this. Well, turns out he's there on the #1 list for the crime of vigilantism and all of that. So, of course, he gets trapped at the end by them. But what's going on with this mayor? Well, he's kind of doing his own version of Amanda Waller. He has connections with that. There's apparently previous adventures with this character. And so that's the deal. And he's got control of these people. And at the end, the one rogue that's missing is Pied Piper. He shows up, and apparently he's going to take the side of the Flash in this one, while everybody else is being extorted. And it appears, at least with his initial minion, he has absolute control over, because can electrocute them anytime he wants. So obviously he, I guess, has some implants on them or something like that. But anyway, that's what he's doing. And probably a guy who wants to go full hardcore on crime and whatnot, far beyond what superheroes would be willing to do. And that's the take on this guy, or at least that's what it appears to be on the surface. So that's interesting. It introduces all of this, and the back and forth with the Rogues and the Flash is good. Plus, they reveal they're having another kid. Spoiler. And there was an interesting thing about that, because I said all of a sudden they had Linda have superpowers, and she was zipping around with Flash powers in the Dark Crisis tie-ins and all that. And it's like, what the, and so now they might have a pretty good explanation for it, is that, she's pregnant with another child. It's Wally's kid, I assume. Of course it is. And that could be the reason why she has the powers. Of course, I don't recall that happening for the other two, but this time it has. And so maybe when she gives birth, she won't have the powers anymore, or maybe they'll probably have them stick, so that the full-blown Flash family and all of that. So that was interesting aspect to it, even though she's being examined by Mr. Terrific and Dr. Midnight, and she says, hey, so maybe that's why I have Flash powers all of a sudden. And Mr. Terrific and Dr. Midnight hadn't thought of that. I mean, it's a silly panel, but it's like, maybe Dr. Midnight, but Mr. Terrific would have figured that out. But, well, what are you going to do? So they left it up, so we don't know for sure, but, it's a pretty good guess. So that's the Flash. So finally, after 5 issues, I get to one that I think shows some signs of hope and perhaps interest there. So I thought that one was pretty good. Meanwhile, as for going forward with DC, one of the things that I thought might be interesting is Jeff Johns' Golden Age initiative. So he's going to do a new Justice Society series. And so just to get you started, they had this Golden Age one-shot, the new Golden Age, rather. And basically, that's what it is. It's just an introduction and all the big mystery, and heroes have disappeared, and there's forgotten Golden Age heroes, which means they're just new characters pulled out of Jeff Johns' ass. But doesn't mean they won't be good. So, and mostly you don't get a whole lot. It's just a tease, just a giant teaser. Hope the ongoing series is quite the payoff. There's setups about, it all begins with the death of Dr. Fate. So, no more Kent Nelson is basically, which is pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point. And so Khalid will be the new Dr. Fate going forward and all that. But I'm wondering how they're doing this. If they're restoring multiverse stuff, will they put them back on their own Earth with their own Batman and Superman? I don't know. They introduced Helena Wayne, and so she's the daughter of Batman, but in the Earth 1 version, she wasn't. And I didn't know what they would do with all of that. But there's signs of showing her as a young girl, and she discovers her father's Batman, and then he's showing her the cave and everything. And then there's all the Robins, and not just Dick Grayson, but all of them. Even Damian Wayne's costume is on display in there. And so I'm like, well, this is going to be a jump forward. And so the idea is that eventually Selina and Bruce Wayne have a daughter, Helena, and she's the Huntress. And so maybe that's what they're doing, but that's all part of the mystery, So finally at the end, there's the sort of mock-up of the old Who's Who in the DC Universe things that DC used to do, which was their answer to the official handbook to the Marvel Universe issues they would do, which is basically just a bunch of pages with character stats and their origin stories and descriptions of them with a nice rendering of them and all that. Yeah, it's nice. So you can keep track of all the craziness of these giant universes. So it does that, but it shows off the Golden Age versions of these characters. And right off the bat is Aquaman. And what's interesting is the original Aquaman was not just a knockoff of the Submariner. Now, I had gotten confused over the years. I thought didn't have anything to do with Atlantis, but actually, and this one brings it up, and I've looked into it, that yes, his father was an underwater explorer, scientist, and all this, but his father had discovered remnants of Atlantis and wanted to study it further, and had his young son with him there. His mother had died. In the new version, it says his mother dies in childbirth, and while they're both living in the ancient Atlantean city, it says it was actually an outpost to give it credence that the real Atlantis is somewhere else. But anyway, as a result of being in there, his son is affected by this and develops his Aquaman powers. And that was the deal, that it was a scientific experiment. And so he becomes Aquaman as a result of that, not being the, half surface dweller father, son, and half Atlantean woman, son, just like Submariner, and then being the rightful king of Atlantis and all that sort of stuff, which is, once again, taken totally from Namor. So it's interesting that this is reintroduced here, because it's just largely been forgotten. The mainstream Aquaman was, king of Atlantis and all that stuff. It's probably a little late to go back and retcon it all, but I would imagine that this is more the idea, if they're reintroducing this version, then it has to be a multiverse, alternate Earth take on it. Which means they can have alternate Earth Batman, alternate Earth Superman, the original Superman, all that stuff brought back into it for the Justice Society to be as it once was, rather than cobbled together with a modern take on those characters living in the same Earth, and which I always had a problem with, because it takes away from Superman. Because if Superman shows up and wow, it's Superman, he can fly, well, so what? Superheroes have been doing that for years, since World War II. See, it doesn't, it's like, it doesn't quite have the impact that it ordinarily would. So that's why the parallel world thing is the only way to, I think, make that work in and of itself. You got to make your choices. Justice Society or Justice League, or you split them in their own worlds. So anyway, that's the deal. It's just a teaser for what Jeff Johns is up to here, and the Justice Society series itself will tell the tale, as it should. Yes. Well, a little spin-off of this is Stargirl, coming on the heels of the cancellation of the TV series that was Jeff Johns' baby. Which is a show I liked, for what it was. As CW affair goes, it was pretty good. The only thing better than that was the Superman show. And so basically this is a tie-in to what the mysteries are. The Golden Age series reveals that it looks like Perdigotten, who's the main big foe of the Justice Society, the time-traveling guy, and that goes all the way back to the comics of the 40s. And so time travel, manipulating and messing things around, hence the lost heroes that you never knew, some made up, and in the case of Aquaman, some that weren't. You know, he was there at the original time. And so you've got Stargirl and her friend Red Arrow, a female version, looking into the mystery of these missing sidekicks of these old superheroes. So it's Stargirl, the Lost Children, and so I obviously would have to be connected to all of this, and so that's the deal there. It's all right. There's a lot of cheesiness from the old days of those superhero stories, and there's always these attempts to try to weave it into modern styles. Well, some success and some not so much. But if you're able to keep it as characters in that era, it lends more credence to it, and so perhaps that'll work out. But it's fine. It's just I'll have to look further into it. But didn't overwhelm me with wow, man, you got to check this out, like World's Finest did. Speaking of World's Finest, finally, another issue 9 of World's Finest. Still great. It's now the Joker has moved in as the big bad, teaming up with the Key, and they steal a weapon from Wonder Woman's old villain, the Angle Man, with his magic triangle, and they use it to open a door and flood Gotham City with it. And so our heroes have to save the day, which they do. But in the meantime, the ongoing problem is Thunder Boy, or Boy Thunder, and his problems. And we reveal what's the thing that's troubling him is that his parents had built a spaceship for the whole family to escape in, but he was a stupid kid and he played with it and broke it. So they were trying to repair it, but by the time the destruction of his world came, they couldn't fix it in time, so they could only save him. So that's what's dogging him, and he lashes out violently, and and some of the takedowns he does with the Teen Titans, and they're all concerned about it. And so he tells Superman this, but then they have to rush off and deal with this flood in Gotham. And then at the end, the Joker manages to capture Boy Thunder using his, laughing gas. So now, at this pivotal moment, it's possible that Boy Thunder is going to lose it all and become a villain, So that's the deal there. So it remains the absolute best, and it blows the others away. Sorry. Now they may improve and show good promise down, in future issues. But at the moment, World's Finest is just about as good as it gets. It's just basic superhero fun. So there you go. If that template is what they would employ going forward, DC Comics would have quite the resurrection. But that doesn't appear to be the case. Dawn of the DC Universe will soon be underway. This Golden Age stuff is kind of part of that. But basically, what are they doing? Well, they're following the end of the Dark Crisis event with another event of Lazarus Planet, which follows into another event after that. They're keeping that under wraps, but it's night something. I don't know. Most guess it means night terror, something like that. Perhaps another Batman event, all encapsulated within a year-long event called Dawn of DC. Yes. So how about that? Yeah, you're sick to death of events. Well, you're getting a whole lot more. Yeah. When all they really needed to do was just go ahead and wrap up Dark Crisis and say you rebooted the whole thing, and you follow stories in the tone of World's Finest, and you'd be good. Yeah, you'd be good. So a couple of those titles they went through. This is a couple of weeks ago. Some look good. The bad news is for World's Finest is that Mark Waid and Dan Mora will be leaving that book. Hopefully someone can follow what they've created there. And moving over to Shazam. So that means perhaps Shazam will now become the best superhero comic. If they continue this tone and template with that one, as they did here, then yeah, it'll be a good comic. Of the others, I don't know. There's a Doom Patrol comic. It might be good. I don't know. Haven't really checked out Doom Patrol in a while. The Action Comics of Superman has a shot. Maybe that'll be good. Just don't know. But it's Clark Kent, the whole thing. And just forget about all the stuff, the John Kent stuff, which never had a chance. Granted, the character of John Kent is still relatively new, so I suppose you could say, hey, who's to say he's not bisexual, which just means he's gay. He's never going to have a girlfriend again. But the Tim Drake thing was just absolutely absurd. But that's the thing, it's never going to be respected because it comes across as this cheap thing to get headlines from sites that no one reads. So, I have no hope for that whatsoever, but it's been canceled, but they'll have a 6-issue follow-up. Who cares? Action Comics, maybe there's a shot there with Dan Jurgens on it and stuff like that. I don't think he's the regular writer though. But anyway, we'll have to see. And then there's Batman Brave and the Bold, new take on that, but it has Tom King on it. So that's a brick wall. Stop. Sorry. No more Tom King. I don't trust that guy ever with superhero comics. Again, he fooled me once. Never again. So there we go. Wish there could be more hopeful on that, but pretty dubious. But there might be a couple here and there. You need a lot more than that, considering the state DC Comics is in. So more than likely, the rumors of it being outsourced probably will come true. And at this point, probably for the better. Anyway, there you go. That's the comics I looked at for this episode of Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics. Oh, yeah.